Okay, we'll get started here. I want to welcome everyone to the April 4th, 2022 PROS Commission meeting. We'll begin tonight's meeting with the roll call.
Vice Chair Kearsley,
Here.
Commissioner Cook,
Here.
Commissioner Garland,
Here.
Commissioner Moran,
Here.
and Commissioner Oler.
Here.
Let the record show we're all in attendance.
Okay, terrific. Since we have a brand new commissioner to the commission, I would like to introduce Commissioner Jason Cook. Jason, if you would like to tell us a few words and welcome.
Thank you. Honor and privilege to be commissioner. I've just met you all for the first time, and I've done my homework and met with staff and appreciated all the information and everybody keeping me up, getting me up to speed. So look forward to making a contribution.
Terrific. We're glad to have you. Okay, now we're going to move on to chair and vice chair.
Yes.
Okay, I guess we'll start with chair. That would be proposed me. Do we have a motion for me as chair?
I make a motion to nominate Robert Kearsley as the next chair.
Terrific. Do we have a second?
Second.
And vote.
Can I take roll? Commissioner Moran,
Aye.
Commissioner Oler,
Yes.
Commissioner Garland,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
and soon-to-be Chair Kearsley.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Terrific. We're going to move on to vice chair. Is there a motion for Fran Garland to be vice chair?
I have a motion for Commissioner Fran Garland to be vice chair.
And is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay.
Commissioner Oler,
Yes.
Commissioner Moran,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Chair Kearsley,
Yes.
and soon-to-be Vice Chair Garland.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
We're going to move on to public communications. I think that's correct, right? Yep. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the PROS Commission cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. Consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will be allocated at this time for public communications for items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for items not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the meeting if necessary. We will begin with in-person for items not on the agenda for in-person attendees, followed by any Zoom attendees. Do we have any at this time?
Yes, and if I could you read one other item about the Zoom link and just how people can get on, just in case?
Okay. To provide a live remote public comment, join the Zoom video conference meeting. The meeting ID is 879-3072-4826, and the passcode is 558236.
Thank you. So I have one hand raised, and I would just want to confirm that it's for public communication, and that is Julie Welsh.
Good afternoon. This is Julie Welsh. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the commission for listening, and I appreciate your service. I'm Julie Welsh. I've been a resident of Walnut Creek for over 30 years. I live on Dapple Gray Lane, right across the street from the pickleball courts. And I wanted to request that the commission consider moving the pickleball courts to Heather Farms to reduce the noise and parking issues that have arisen in our neighborhood. For 30 years, it's been a very tranquil, peaceful neighborhood. But since the pickleball courts were installed, they converted the tennis courts to pickleball. It's become extremely noisy with the constant noise of the pickleball paddles. And the pickleball players are playing from sunrise to sunset 7 days a week. I've spoken to a number of my neighbors, and a lot of us work from home full time. So it's very disruptive to work, even with double pane windows. Most of us have double pane windows. You can hear the loud popping of the pickleball hitting the paddle, and also the players yelling, hollering, etc. And I don't have anything against pickleball. I think working out is great, but it's just the location. Ideally, they would be transferred over to Heather Farms, where there are more courts available and parking facilities. For the short term, we would appreciate if you could relocate them to the Stewart address, which has a parking lot, and it's set off further from the homes. And a minimum, I would really appreciate, as my neighbors would, that the commission requires softer paddles be used so that it isn't so loud. I understand other facilities use softer paddles that reduce the noise substantially. Then we can enjoy sitting in our backyard and we can work without constant noise all day. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Again, I'm Julie Welsh on Dapple Gray Lane. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Peter Bishop.
Good evening. If Walnut Creek adopts the proposal to create flow trails and convert existing single-track trails to multi-use in Lime Ridge, all the points raised by the many interested parties will be ignored.
So, Peter, you were speaking, I think, on item 4A, not on public comment? Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving along. Oh,
We have one more speaker.
I'm sorry.
Shiva Sundaram.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for listening to our comments today. Julie is actually my neighbor, and we also live in Dapple Gray, right across from the pickleball courts. In addition to what Julie mentioned about the noise, we have a serious parking problem. Because our house is right across from the courts, people park right next to our curb. They actually block our entryway steps, which lead into the house, and sometimes even partially blocking our driveway. As a result, we can't even get out of the house without, worrying about hitting somebody else. On top of that, they park on both sides of the driveway and they completely block the vision of the road. And I've had some near misses because of that. And because they take up the entire curb space, nobody can park there. Not visitors, not delivery men, gardeners, nobody. And it makes it very difficult to access the house. And then there's the issue of garbage. On trash days, they park so close to the bins that the garbage trucks won't even come and pick up the trash. And we've missed the trash so many times. I mean, I could keep going on about the parking, but I think we really need some immediate relief with the parking and the noise. That's all. Thank you so much for listening to us.
Shiva, thank you for your comments. Are there anyone else?
I do not see any other hands raised at this time. Oh, wait, I have one more hand raised. Linda Haraguchi.
Hello. I've been a resident. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
I live on Manhasset Court. Arbolado Park is right down the street. And I've been a resident of Walnut Creek since 1979. I've raised my boys here, my grandkids, and it's just a wonderful residential community. And I just want to speak out about, I just got this notice that the city wants to build a high-speed mountain biking flow trail in Lime Ridge open space.
Linda, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We gladly welcome your comments. This portion of the meeting is only for comments related to items not on the agenda. So if you could please, we welcome you back, and please comment during the time for that item which is on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so
Are you
much.
going to tell me when it's time?
Yes.
We will. Thank you.
Like when it's on the agenda? Because I don't have the agenda in front of me.
I will announce that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do not see any other hands raised.
Okay, for those,
Sorry, sorry, audience. I have a hand raised, Karen Stiles. Are you there, Karen? Are you on mute? We've lost Karen. We can move on to the next item if she comes
Are you
back.
sure?
Well, yeah.
okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. It's the approval of minutes of the special meeting of October 11th, 2021. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
It's October 11th and February 7th.
Oh, so we're not doing separate? Just,
No.
Okay, that makes it easy. Okay, so October 11th and 7th. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes, the consent calendar.
Second?
I second it.
Okay, Vice Chair Garland,
Approve.
Commissioner Oler,
Approve.
Commissioner Cook,
Approved.
Commissioner Moran,
Approved.
and Chair Kearsley.
Approved.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, I think we're moving on to consideration.
Yes.
And what's under consideration, of course, is a Walnut Creek Trail Committee update. And we'll start with staff, yeah. Mike?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mike Vickers, Public Works Manager for the City of Walnut Creek, responsible for Parks and Open Space. And it's nice to welcome you aboard, Commissioner Cook. We're looking forward to a good future with no masks, hopefully. I haven't seen these faces in, I think, a couple years, so looking forward to it. Tonight, I will be, actually, staff will be presenting an update on the Trail Committee recommendations. The recommendations will include an update from, let me, actually, how do I mount this up here? I'll get started with the agenda while they're doing that. The update's going to include some photos from Corey Frazier and some updates from the staff and volunteers and the products that they've addressed over the past year. We've also had a number of trail closures and a lot of successes with those trail closures. And then we've moved into kind of a different signage package where we're updating some of our trail signs and educational signs. And then Corey's going to finish his portion of the presentation with a weed abatement update for this season. And then it's going to come back to me. I'm going to provide an update for the flow trail. And we have our environmental consultant on the line who's also going to provide an update, a brief summary of the environmental assessment that was conducted this time last year. Okay, so before I turn it over to Corey, I just wanted to remind you and the viewers at home that the Trail Committee started back in 2019 with the goal of evaluating the current conditions, putting their vision hat on to see how we can make improvements over time with both the environment and the safety of our users. The Trail Committee consisted of 2 PROS commissioners, which chaired the committee. a number of Open Space Foundation board members, representatives from the biking community, hiking community, and I don't specifically call out the hikers here because everybody on the committee, including staff, regularly use the open space for hiking. As I mentioned, the focus was looking to improve the overall situation for both plant and animal and for recreational uses. And if you were to go back to your staff report, attachment 1 is the 20-page update, which can also be, trail report, which can also be found online. I'll turn it over to Corey.
All right, fancy. Good evening, commissioners. Hello, everybody. Senior Ranger Corey Frazier. I'm going to walk us through some of the improvements that's gone on in the open space. I think it's been about a year since we've updated everyone on that. So just kind of give you an idea of some of the projects we've been working on, just kind of what's been happening around the open space. It's been a busy year. Things are starting to get back to normal in terms of use. 2020, 2021, I think everyone knows. Use in the open space exploded. We have had a number of issues in terms of social trails popping up and, excess litter and whatnot. And so use is getting back to normal now, and staff's been working on a bunch of different things. So I'll just run you guys through that. One of the major projects last summer was a shelter replacement at Borges Ranch. As you can see, it's a big improvement from what we see on the left versus what we see on the right. The new redwood structure at Borges Ranch is open for picnics and special events. So if you're interested in reserving the area, you can reach out to me via email or phone call. So more improvements. This is the bridge at Sugarloaf Open Space. It's kind of hard to tell in the picture, but on the left, that bridge was severely cracked and eroded. Several years of water just hitting it in the right spot. So actually our street maintenance division came by and worked with us to replace all the concrete around the culverts there, and then open space staff replaced the fencing and the gates. So that's a big improvement over there at Sugarloaf Open Space. Next, we've got some improvements in terms of fencing. Here's a couple of examples of fencing that was installed over the past year. The photo on the left is on the Bramhall Trail. Just below that is a very steep drop-off into the creek bed, and this particular segment of trail was a little bit of a safety concern for us, so we added some fencing there for some added security for those using that trail segment. On the center to right is more fencing on Indian Creek Trail. They were put in for restorative purposes to keep people out of the creek bed and on the designated trail. So there's a number of sort of fencing projects like that's been going on over the past year with the focus of either safety or restoration or both. So more fencing. This is on the Paradise Valley Trail. We worked with the trail dogs to install about 80 feet worth of fencing on this particular section. It's blocking off the cutting of a switchback in that area. And overall, I think it enhances the look of that area. What's not pictured here is down below. We added a bunch of logs to really sort of let people know not to cut that switchback. And we are starting to see some positive regrowth in that area. And that area came to be, that social trail came to be because when we had the fire back in 2018, the bulldozers just dozed right down through that area, and so just created this big wide swath, and that we're slowly getting back to where it should be. So more fencing. This fencing was recently installed over in the quarry area in Lime Ridge. These fences were put in for safety and restoration purposes. Not a trail signage had previously been installed in these areas, but we believe the fencing will be more effective than just the signage. So staff's goal for this area is to greatly reduce the overall footprint from users and prevent any further erosion issues. The work needed here is ongoing, and staff will be spending additional time here monitoring and working towards restoring this area in the coming months. So that's one of our goals here coming up. More improvements. Obviously, we got some rain last year in October and December. As you see in the photo, Deer Lake in July of 21 was just about completely dried up. And then Deer Lake in January of 2022, just about full. So obviously, that was a good thing. We're starting to see some wildlife re-enter the ponds in terms of frogs and turtles, and then hopefully some other species that are going unnoticed. But that rain was great, but as everyone knows, we're in a bit of a hole to start this year, and the dry weather is a concern as we head into summer. So with all that rain, we had a lot of trail repairs that were needed to be done. Here's some examples of that. A lot of rutting out there on our single tracks and on our fire roads. So staff spent the better part of the last 3 months readdressing some of those issues, and then we took the opportunity to add some sustainable drainage features in some of those areas, so that hopefully when the next set of big storms roll through, we'll be a little bit better prepared and have a more sustainable trail system overall. So we're going to get into some more photos. As I mentioned, a lot of trail repairs out there. This was the biggest washout we saw, and it was on the Hannah Lane Trail in just not too far from Borges Ranch and Shell Ridge. And we worked with some contractors to patch this area up. But pretty extensive hole there. And there were a number of washouts, not this big, but of a considerable size out in the Lime Ridge and Shell Ridge and throughout the area. And so staff's been backfilling those and working on getting those areas safe and good to go for trail use. So more trail repairs. This is on Indian Creek Trail. A lot of similar washouts like this where we had to go back and add some retaining walls to just kind of hold that trail edge. And there was a number of examples, but this is just one of them. So Mike had mentioned we've seen some progress on our closed areas. Over the past couple of years, restoration has been a focus of staff, and we are seeing those efforts pay off. The photo on the left, November 2020, this was prior to us closing the unauthorized trail segment in Lime Ridge. And as we can see on the right, just a couple of days ago, I took this picture. We are seeing positive regrowth. It seems that most users are respecting the signage in that area and are staying off that particular trail segment. We're seeing plants and wildlife start to kind of move back and take over that area again. So the area is still signed and closed and will remain that way indefinitely. So here's another look from that same trail segment just from above. So as we can see, our tactic here was to just backfill the rutting with a bunch of rocks and wattles and kind of prevent erosion from just water shooting down that segment on the right-hand side. And it's working, and we're seeing, like I said, a lot of regrowth coming back in there, so it's positive. We're happy to see that working out. So more closed areas and restoration. As I mentioned, it's been a focus of staff over the past year. Pictured here is the Bronco Butte Trail in Shell Ridge, where it connects to the Hannah Lane Trail. This trail has been closed for restoration purposes. As you can see on the map, it was originally intended to be an out and back trail. However, a steep, unsustainable through trail has formed over the years, leading to erosion problems on the north-facing slope near the Hannah Lane trailhead. So open space staff will continue to monitor this area as it remains closed, but there's an alternative route via the Hannah Lane Trail that takes you to the same spot, and so we don't think that it's a big impact to users out there. All right, so you may have noticed if you've been out in the open space some new signage. It's designed to catch your eye and make you want to look at it. A lot of the old signage, brown, kind of blends in with the trailheads. This was designed to really make you want to look at it and see what the sign says. So These signs are focused on trail etiquette, and each say something different, such as stay on designated trails, stay alert and be courteous, leave no trace, don't cut switchbacks, keep your dog under control at all times, and do not take, harm, disturb, or damage plants and wildlife. And we plan on rotating these signs around, just so, folks that hike maybe the same loop or tend to use the same trails, maybe we'll get a different sign in a few months. And so we also try to put them in areas where, those particular, where it's a heavy dog area, we're putting, keep your dog under control at all times. And if we know they're coming in a trailhead where there's switchbacks that, people tend to cut, we'll put the don't cut switchbacks. That's how it started, but it seems to be working out. We've got some positive feedback on these signs so far. So volunteers, over the past year, there's been many volunteers that have helped out in the open space, and here are some photos of them in action. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has helped out, especially the trail dogs. They've helped out with various trail projects, fencing projects, even weed abatement on our single tracks and our fire breaks, and the effort they put in is greatly appreciated. All right, so I just wanted to take this opportunity to also highlight the Open Space Foundation and kind of focus on all the work that they do out there. They have several ongoing restoration projects that involve restoring native plants, planting and fostering the growth of young oak trees. They have been building habitat for wildlife and also remove a bunch of invasive species out there. So just a shout out to them and thank you. The city certainly appreciates the partnership we have with Open Space Foundation and recognize all the work that they do out there. All right, lastly, I'll finish my section up with weed abatement. So just an update on weed abatement season. It is starting. The deadline for completion is currently May 4th. It's a bit earlier than it has been in previous years, but once again, we'll be using all the tools available, including our hand abatement tools, our mechanical abatement, our mowers, and we've got a disker that comes through. And we will be grazing cattle out in the open space again this year. They will be out there soon. And the park staff that typically work the park maintenance around the city will also be helping us to make sure we get weed abatement done in a timely fashion and try to meet our deadline. In all, there's about 30 miles of fire break that get done every year. And that's not including all the abatement that's done along our fire roads and our single tracks. So in total, there's approximately 70 miles of either disking or mowing or hand abatement that gets done every year. And then on top of that, another few hundred acres of grazing. So needless to say, this is the busiest time for staff the spring. We will be out there pretty much nonstop for the next 6 weeks or so. And that's all I have. So I'll turn it over to Mike, and thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Corey. And I also want to thank Corey's staff who's not here. There's a Dan Byland, one of our long-term rangers, just recently retired, so the open space field staff is down to 5. We're currently in the recruiting process for another ranger and hope to have second and final interviews for that position probably within a week to 2 weeks, and then we'll start the background, hopefully have someone come in and replace Dan relatively soon so we can get back up to full speed here. In addition, I wanted to thank the volunteers as well. The foundation has been one of our partners for 40, 50 years. The restoration work that they do out there is really fantastic. I was talking with the chair about Fossil Hill, the work off of Sutherland that Phil Johnson does, and we featured that with council in our last council update. So the work that they do is really impressive. A lot of hard work goes into it. Okay, so jumping into the update for the proposed flow trail, I wanted to start here just as a reminder for anybody that's relatively new to this conversation, what the trail looks like. You can see with the image on the left-hand side of this slide, the X marks the parking lot at the east end of Valley Vista, which is adjacent to the golf course. This would be the number one trailhead, so to speak, the official trailhead for the flow trail. You'd park there, you'd start riding up the existing trail. Most of it is the Paraiso Trail, takes you to the very top, which is the black line, and then the flow trail starts where the red does at the top and meanders its way down through there. About halfway down, you'll see, it's a little hard to tell, but there's an orange line representing the Timberleaf Trail, which I'll share a little bit more in just a minute. The flow trail meanders past the Timberleaf Trail and then ties back into to the parking lot there at Boundary Oak. The secondary trailhead is there identified with the arrow, which is at Arbolado Park. You can park there, you can access the open space through the trail system, get over to the X, and then start your flow trail from there. The flow trail itself is just short of 2.5 miles and can be used in a number of different ways. You could almost use it as 2 separate loops. Initially, when we were going through the draft design, the second piece, which would be the piece below the Timberleaf Trail, wasn't in our original thought. We received some feedback about potentially adding that in there to ensure that the motivation is to get down to the parking lot, but also make that maybe a little bit more accessible for novice riders so that they can learn how to ride and understand the rules and the safety that comes along with it. So in theory, you could use the shorter loop with maybe a child of yours or a beginner rider. So the next few slides are going to be based around community feedback that we've received over the last year to 14 months regarding this project. The one thing that you're not going to see in these next few slides is the 1985 Lime Ridge Regional Master Plan or the 2006 General Plan. I gave, if you remember, at the last meeting we addressed this about a year ago, I gave kind of a walkthrough history and kind of shared with the commission what the 85 General Plan stated and a little bit about what the 06 General Plan, sorry, the 85 Master Plan and 06 General Plan stated. And I want to inform you that we've done a lot of research and this project is not in conflict with either one of those. If there are questions regarding the 85 Master Plan or the General Plan, we can certainly answer those, but I wasn't going to be sharing much more than that tonight. So fire risk. We've received questions from community about, more people potentially means more risk out in the open space. And as Corey pointed out in his presentation, and I'll probably say it a couple more times, we just went through a 2-year period of the highest use that our staff has seen and that we're confident in saying has ever been out in the open space. For any of you that were out there in April, just after everything shut down, you were looking around going, where are all these people coming from? And the open space was just packed. In fact, some of our rangers that have been around 15, 20, 22 years will state that the numbers that they've seen were 50 to 75 to 100% more than they would have normally seen. So almost double of what they've seen. We went through that period. We had 2 fires during that period. We had a small fire in Shell Ridge, not far off of the Sutherland entrance, which was from a homeless individual. It was probably a 1/4 acre. And then we had a fire in Central Lime Ridge off of YVR that was started in a similar location as the one that we had in 2018 that burned about 600 acres. The one in YVR started from a car pulling a chain or backfiring or something along those lines. So we've been through periods where we've had more bodies out there than we've ever seen before. And we've been, we've gone without any major fires starting, anything along those lines. Our annual weed abatement program, as Corey pointed out, just started a couple weeks ago. Our weed abatement has to be done early in May this year because of the conditions. We always meet the county standards. We have our own set of standards, and typically we exceed standards that are directed our way. PG&E has some lines for people who are familiar with the area. If you were at the top of the Arbolado Park, there's a power line that goes from Arbolado, almost parallels the Paraiso Trail through Lime Ridge and gets over to Concord. PG&E is going to be undergrounding those lines, which is a great benefit. They haven't given us a date, although they've assured us that that work is going to happen in the future. And lastly, in regards to fire risk, and I've shared this a couple other presentations, is I met on site with a fire technician on Timberleaf to address concerns about parking, and asked the fire technician to envision the street lined with vehicles. Would there be a challenge in there in terms of getting rescue access to one of the homes? They indicated no. And then for those of you who know the area, about a half a block south of Timberleaf, there's an emergency access point that would allow for larger vehicles to get into the open space. Most of you have seen that. I believe I showed you from time to time. Security. We've had questions about more people may mean some security risks in our neighborhood. As I pointed out, we've had, in some cases, 100% more use than we've seen. Can you hear me? Oh, there it is. I reached out to Concord PD along with Walnut Creek PD and asked them if they've seen an uptick in criminal activity over this most recent 2-year period where we had the excessive amount of users. They both stated that they have not seen an uptick in criminal activity in the neighborhoods that are adjacent to open space. There's no evidence that states that building this trail would create a security risk for the adjacent neighbors. Parking. Parking has been a big topic of conversation. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the ideal location would be at Boundary Oak, the parking lot at the east end of Valley Vista. Secondarily would be at Arbolado. If parking becomes an issue, and there was a during public comment, there were some neighbors that were talking about the challenges they're having on Dapple Gray in regards to parking. I've met out there with our traffic engineer, and we are working behind the scenes to come up with some potential options. If there is a parking issue on Timberleaf, any side street, whether it's related to parks and open space or whatever, when that information is brought into the city, city will monitor it, will evaluate it, and Heather, as part of the engineering department, oversees our traffic engineering department and will address those issues as they come up. The Timberleaf Trail. So Timberleaf, I am going to share a little history with you on the Timberleaf Trail here because there's quite a bit to it. The park itself was getting ready to open up in '97, and so the staff, my position at the time, met with a number of community volunteers, and they went out and surveyed Lime Ridge and talked about a number of things and developed an operational plan. That operational plan was approved in 1996 by the City Council. With one exception, there was some feedback from the Rancho Paraiso community that said, hey, we wanted some restrictions around a couple of the trailheads, most importantly, the Timberleaf Trailhead. They wanted that Timberleaf Trailhead to not be mapped. They wanted the trailhead to be a private access for Rancho Paraiso only. They wanted it to be a single-use, single-track trail, meaning for pedestrians only. No bikes, no equestrians. Typically, when you have a single-track trail, and they requested that it is for pedestrian use only. So staff and PROS Commission in early '97 agreed that the trail would be for pedestrian use only. It wouldn't be on the map. However, it was going to be available to the public. It was not going to be a private entrance for the community. That was the recommendation. However, the recommendation never went back to council for final approval. So that being said, it's a little gray. It's a little fuzzy out there what happened. So in 2009, the trail it became a multi-use trail and was mapped. We didn't hear anything from the community until we started a branding process that took us throughout the entire open space. In fact, the Rancho Paraiso neighborhood was one of the last last part of the branding project, where we were going through and updating all the gates and all the signage. And sometime in 19, it might have been early in 20, Corey would probably know better. I think he put the materials in. We changed out the gate and we added a multi-use sign for the trailhead. And we received some feedback at that time about the multi-use trail, the signage. Some of the neighbors weren't comfortable with that. They didn't know it was a multi-use trail. They were saying, hey, this was the agreement. We said, we're just following what it says on the map. It's a multi-use trail. And at that point, we also explained to them the reason there wasn't a sign there before shouldn't dictate why there isn't a sign now. What we found was after the fire in 2018, where we had that 600 acres burn, in 19, we were getting red flag warnings like for a period of 3 months, almost every other week. And when we have a criteria, when we get a red flag warning, depending on the conditions, we will close the open space. And what we do is we go to those regulation signs and we just flip them and lock them in place, so staff doesn't have to drive around with a whole bunch of different signs. It's a two-part sign. And so we wanted to bring that to the front gate so that you didn't have to meander up 150 feet into the open space to find out that the open space was closed. And that was the main purpose for putting that sign there. It was not to activate it and let everyone know that it's a multi-use trail to make the space more active. It was really a public safety sign that was going to be able to provide us the opportunity to close the open space. So we started getting some pushback. When this project started, we really got pushback and from the community saying, hey, we didn't have an opportunity to weigh in on this change. And we do change things from time to time without checking in with the general public. Staff does have the authority to do that. And the other thing that was made it a little bit messy is some of the older signs. If you've been around the open space long enough, periodically you'll see an old sign that's typically 6x6. That'll be a horse with a line through it or a bike with a line through it. Those two signs indicating that this was a single-use trail remained in place, and it was just an oversight on staff. Staff didn't remove them. So we had a multi-use trail sign, and then not too far from it, a couple other signs that made it confusing. So I don't think we're going to solve the Timberleaf Trailhead conversation tonight. It might be something that we need to discuss further in the future. But as of right now, the trail is a multi-use trail. And the reason it has the sign and the new gate is part of our branding process, but also for public safety purposes. So education and enforcement, Corey touched on a lot of the improved signage, including the educational signage. The one thing we need to do, probably spend a little bit more time in, is keeping our open space webpage up to date. Sometimes that can fall a little bit behind on some of the information that we want to share. We often share it with the PROS Commission and the council and not always get around to updating our website. So we need to focus on that a little bit better. And then enforcement takes place every day. It's not out there writing citations or warnings. It's really about Corey and the field staff making contact with users and reminding them, where they can be, what the trail etiquette is, not building social trails, staying on the authorized trails, that type of thing. Corey, if you were to ask him, he feels as though he's had a lot of success, he and Art, in the past year, about talking to people that have been out building unauthorized trails or hikers hiking on unauthorized trails. He feels like he's starting to get through. In regards to other enforcement options, we're addressing those internally, and we'll have an update for you in the future. So I think this is my last slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Nomad so that they can summarize their environmental assessment. We work pretty closely with the City of Concord. As the Commission knows, we manage 200 to 250 acres of their property in Lime Ridge, and they pay for approximately half of the rate of a ranger. And then we also meet with them semi-regular basis, I would say quarterly. I meet with my counterpart, Eugene, in the City of Concord upper management in Walnut Creek has met with upper management in Concord. Concord is fully up to speed on this project and other things that are taking place in Lime Ridge, or even discussions of things that are potentially going to be taking place in Lime Ridge. The multi-use trail is entirely on Walnut Creek property, and the preferred trailhead, as I mentioned, is the Boundary Oak Golf Course. So I'm going to turn this over to Nomad, and they are going to participate through Zoom. I think Heather is going to be bringing Dana. Okay, Orlando's going to bring Dana Terry up, who's going to summarize his portion and then turn it over to Heath Bartosh. Hi, Dana. Can you hear us?
Hi. Yes, I can hear you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, all right. Thank you, Michael, and thank you to the council for having us here tonight. So yeah, my name is Dana Terry. I'm a senior wildlife biologist with Nomad Ecology. I've been a wildlife biologist in the Bay Area for about 17 years now. And the city brought us on to come and have a look at the trail alignment in Lime Ridge, just to and we wrote a what we call a biological resources assessment. And this assessment was, it's really just to establish what are the existing conditions at the site, identify the habitats and the potential for all various special status species and wildlife movement corridors, things like that. And then to make recommendations for further surveys that could be necessary as part of the assessment process. So going out there from the wildlife perspective, we were primarily looking at obviously a lot of it is grassland. We were looking for a lot of grassland species, and then it does skirt through. It does skirt actually right past some scrub habitat and some oak woodland habitat. And there's one small drainage there. So we were looking for species that could appear in those habitats as well. So we, from the wildlife perspective, we were only out there for a single day. So we were not doing really in-depth surveys, but it was really just, as I said, to assess the habitats and try to get a good idea of what would be out there. So, so we certainly identified habitat for Alameda whipsnake. That's a species that inhabits the scrub habitat that's right near there. There's no question that there's a good potential for them to be in that habitat there. Also, habitat just throughout the grassland for all kinds of birds. Obviously, from large raptors to smaller, just smaller kind of little Tweety birds, basically, that could be down in the grasslands. Also for things like California tiger salamander and red-legged frog. Those are two other species that will spend a fair amount of time underground or in aquatic habitats. So there's certainly potential for those, and then a few special status invertebrates and a few mammal species that primarily would just be moving through the area, not that kind of thing. So our report was really just to kind of establish these existing conditions, as they are at the time when we surveyed it, and we surveyed it last year, approximately this time of year in 2021. So that was mostly what we found from the wildlife side. And then Heath Bartosh, he's also on. He did the rare plant part for this, so he can speak to the rare plants, what we found for rare plants. So I'd like to pass it over to him.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dana. I'm Heath Bartosh, senior botanist at Nomad Ecology. Been a botanist in the East Bay for 20 years and have helped the city of Walnut Creek with a number of projects. Particularly on Lime Ridge, so know it really well. And as Dana mentioned, our biological resources assessment was a way to characterize the habitats and understand what might have the potential to be there. And from that BRA, which we call it, is we identified 6 rare plant species that might have the potential to be within the trail alignment out there. And so along with 22 sensitive natural communities, which are communities that this California Department of Fish and Wildlife gives special status as well. So we have these 6 target species identified in our BRA in February. And then, so the city said, go ahead and do those rare plant surveys for those 6 target species. And so we visited and the proposed trail alignment in April, May, June, and September, when all of those 6 potentially occurring special status plant species were out there. And we did not find any of them within the study area that we were given for the proposed trail. We did find 2 sensitive natural communities, one valley needlegrass grassland, which is purple needlegrass. It's the state official state grass of California. And then the seasonal wetland there in the drainage. And that was it. We also did look for locally rare plants because those are of concern to the local chapter of the California Native Plant Society. And of those categories of locally rare plants that are CEQA significant or regulatorily significant, we did not find any. We found a few that are on the watch list for locally rare plants, but nothing that would raise to the level of CEQA significance there. So that's the high level results for the rare plant surveys. We also did a wetland delineation, which identified the seasonal wetland that we categorize as a sensitive community that was nearby the trail alignment. So I think that summarizes our reports.
Yeah, thank you both, Dana and Heath. It was a very thorough report, and we appreciate your guys' time tonight with the brief summary that you presented. I do want to. Can we go back to the presentation, please? So I'm going to wrap this up here in just a minute. I'm going to share with you oh, I do. Oh, super. Thank you. So in regards to next steps, the city is planning on hiring an additional environmental consultant in May to help us prepare the initial study and to prepare the appropriate CEQA documents. That process, the hiring process will take a few weeks, maybe a month, and then to prepare the initial study and do the CEQA docs, that process will take about 6 to 7 months. As pointed out here, once we're completed that process in February or March, that document will be made public and the community will have an opportunity to provide feedback. Their comments will be recorded and responded to at that point. So in regards to commissioner action for tonight, we're asking that you provide feedback on the open space improvements and the status of the multi-use flow trail in Southern Lime Ridge. Now, Chair, before I turn it over for questions, I just wanted to make just make sure we're on the same page. I was going to turn it over for clarifying questions, and then we'll open it up for public comment for this item. And then once public comment is finished, we'll bring it back for final comments from the commissioner. It is important to note before we get into public comment that the community's feedback and comments regarding the environmental assessment are extremely important. That information will be documented as part of the minutes moving forward. However, we are not planning on responding tonight to those questions and comments. As Heath mentioned, there's a number of surveys that still need to be completed, and we'll be working through those through the CEQA process, and the comments and questions that are shared with us tonight will also be considered as we move forward through the CEQA process. Now I'll turn it over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. You stole my thunder on what I was going to say, but I'll just reiterate it just for those of you who are not familiar with the process. As Mike stated, the way we'll conduct for the remainder of this session as it relates to the consideration, first it'll be commission questions to any of the staff or the consultants, then followed by public comment. We'll begin with those who are in person here, followed by Zoom attendees. If you would like to speak and you've not completed a card, they are available, and please fill one out. And when you come up here to speak, please let us know your name. And if you could please stick to the timeline too, then that way we can get everybody in as well. So thank you for that. So thank you, Dean and Heath from Nomad Ecology. Thank you again, Mike, and thank you, Corey, for your presentations. So I want to open up now for any commissioner questions. Commissioner Garland.
Yes, I'd like to know how many of the miles currently in Lime Ridge are open to bikes and how many total miles of trails are there?
So we have, and Corey, you may have, if you don't mind sitting up here, I might need you to help assist some of these questions. We have approximately 45 miles of double track trails, which bikes are authorized on. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a number of short length single track trails that are considered multi-use. So I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 to 50.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Corey. In regards to Timberleaf Court, I realize it's multi-use currently, and for the history that you gave us, and that was very enlightening, so thank you. Do you know if there's been any thought to not making it multi or making it back to single? And I don't, maybe my memory's misleading me, but I remember there was some talk about maybe like a zigzag gate or something like that. I guess this is going to come up, so I might as well ask it. What is the thought, if there are any thought, to making the Timberleaf inaccessible to bikes? Because if the flow trail ends up going where it is there any thought to making sure that the bikes don't come in and out of Rancho Paraiso?
Yeah, so two questions. One is, has there been any thought about converting it back to the original designated use as single track? That is feedback that we have received from the neighborhood, that they would like to see that. They would like to see it go back to a single use, pedestrian use. That doesn't mean everybody in the neighborhood, but the ones that are speaking up have shared that interest. And that might be something that we need to discuss at a later date. As I said, the trail changed from single use to multi-use in 2009. That's when it was put on the map. We haven't had any negative feedback other than when we put the sign up and then this project came up. The neighborhood is obviously concerned about parking and people lining their streets and maybe preventing other things from taking place on their streets. So it could be a subject that we approach in the near future and have more conversation around. And I think what you're referring to in terms of zigzag and different obstacles, I met with a number of the neighborhood members, I think it was in January or February of 2001. And we talked specifically about weed abatement, then we got into the flow trail, and we talked about potential impacts to the neighborhood and what options were there to prevent bikes from coming through here if that's where we needed to go. And we discussed a number of different options. If that was the road that we went down, there are ways to do that. It even goes back to the 96, 97 document when staff was meeting with the neighborhood and the PROS Commission and council, and you know, the thought then was always, you know, if these side streets, these neighborhood streets are going to be impacted, the staff's going to be here to monitor and try and help alleviate some of those. We can't do that in every situation, but we're not going to turn our eye to it. We're going to see if we can work to alleviate the problem. So.
Mike and Corey, a couple questions for you. I'd like to start by asking you to define flow trail in the context of this project.
So a flow trail is a purposely built, sustainable trail for mountain bike use.
Is it single direction or multi-direction?
They can be both. What's at the staff level, what we've been talking about is if you were to go back, well, I won't show it, but if you were to take the Paraiso Trail to the top where it tied into that red line, that portion would be one direction only for bikes, which would obviously be downhill. That would be the downhill portion of the flow trail.
Okay. As proposed, what is the closest point of the flow trail to any part of the Rancho Paraiso community?
It's about 600, as a bird flies, it's about 620 feet or something along those lines. And at that point, which is the closest point where the trail would basically intersect with the Timberleaf Trail, just to give you an idea, where it intersects, because of the slopes and the trees, vegetation, you can't see any houses from that spot, but it's about 600, from Google, if you did Google Earth, it's about 620 feet.
So more than 2 football fields?
That's correct.
Okay. And then I want to ask about the current usage percentage for Lime Ridge in general between hikers and bikers. I'm assuming there's not a lot of equestrian on Lime Ridge.
There is from time to time, but the equestrian is
So
very.
do you have a rough breakdown of current usage?
Yeah, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd ballpark it about 50-50. I mean, we see trends out in the open space. Weekend mornings, pretty predominantly mountain bikers. Kind of tapers off to where we get a lot more hikers into the afternoon. Heavy mountain bike use in the afternoons to evenings, mostly hikers during the day. So we did a survey last year where we just kind of sat in the parking lot and just counted who came in and out. And it was slightly more hikers than mountain bikers, but like 55-45 kind of a deal.
Okay. And are you noticing any trends, increase or decrease in that regard since the changing in the pandemic, shutdowns and everything else?
Overall numbers, yes, but ratios pretty similar still.
So overall numbers coming down?
Overall numbers and use coming down, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
For a new person coming to Lime Ridge for the first time, how would they know and a mountain biker, how would they know what the rules are in Lime Ridge?
So there are rule and regulation signs at all of our trailheads. We also have the rules and regulations posted on our maps that you can typically find at the larger trailheads where there's kiosks. But that's generally the way they would learn what the rules and regulations are, is through signage, whether it was a sign on a post that said no bikes, or dogs on leash, those types of things. Rules and regulation signage.
What kind of additional sign, or would there be additional signage if the flow trails were completed? What would change there in terms of signage?
Well, initially, certainly up front, as people were coming in, we would be, blasting out trail etiquette, right, in terms of, bikers stopping for hikers and equestrians and those types of things. That pyramid sign that you see, not the pyramid, sorry, the yield sign that you see out there. Along with that, I'm not sure what else. We would have more and more ranger presence in the area and staff presence in the area, making contact and educating. We'd have some additional education signs.
Yeah, let me just speak on that. I mean, I would envision if the flow trail were to happen, obviously it's a different type of trail compared to what we would have out there as of currently. So, I mean, I would envision some additional signage at the beginning of the flow trail and throughout, more educational and speed limit stuff. And so, there would be additional signage that would come along with this trail for sure.
In the comments, the public comments that I read that was forwarded to us prior to the meeting, there were some comments in regards to maybe the different uses coming into contact with each other, whether mountain bikers and hikers or walkers. How has there been a discussion as to how communication can be improved and sort of a mutual respect can it be improved in between those user groups?
Yes, we've had a lot of discussion over years and years and years of that, right? It's challenging. There's no doubt. The biking community feels as though they should have the same rights as a hiker and an equestrian on the single-use trails, as they believe they should have the same equivalent access that they have on the multi-use trails, but they find the single-use trails more exciting. We've had conversations. In fact, a past mayor had brought groups of people together, different types of users, to try and hash out some of the differences and be able to share different perspectives. We did that with some of the trail committee. We had those conversations, some heated conversations from time to time within the trail committee about the different types of uses and recreational points, things along those lines. One of the biggest things that we found is the volunteer programs that Corey runs. We had a lot more success pre-COVID. Obviously, we didn't have large groups where you're inviting just users in general out. And so you have the hikers and the bikers and maybe some equestrians that are, rubbing elbows with each other and talking and trying to get to know one another and maybe sharing perspectives. So generally that's it. It's the educational signage is also supposed to, remind people that it's not just about me, it's about the community and the environment.
I follow the East Bay Regional Parks on Instagram, and I noticed that they put a kiosk that was, I'm not sure who sponsored it, but it was just bells that the bikers you could grab a bell when you're from the parking lot and put it on your bike, so that it was, a hiker would know a bike's coming. Is that something that has been brought up in the past as a measure to, bring these two groups a little closer together without any fewer conflicts?
Yeah, in fact, we talked about it at the trail committee level. We've certainly had those conversations in-house. We've had other staff members say, hey, I've ridden in Idaho or I've ridden in Tahoe, and they've got different mechanisms to inform people of when they're around, and Bell's pretty popular. So we've had those conversations. Yes.
Great. Thanks, guys.
I have another question. Just want to make sure I understand the proposed, the flow trail itself would be unidirectional downhill, and it would be basically bikes only, although I guess in theory, someone else could walk on it. But Paraiso is an existing trail. That would become a one direction uphill, or would it remain it would become a multi-use, or is it already multi-use, and would bikes?
It's a good question. Yeah. So, and I wasn't very clear when I drew the lines out, but the Paraiso Trail's a fire road now. So it's an 8-footer wider trail. Okay. So it is currently a multi-use.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for a long time, and I know there's probably a lot of people that have are not new necessarily, but the renewed interest, as I'm sure you guys have seen, certainly we have as well. I wonder if you can just, you've done it before, and you've done it probably to this very same person asking the question. Can you talk about why the proposed flow trail is proposed where it is? In terms of, if you're looking at a map, and when we said, the city said this would be the best spot for it. Could you just give us a quick history lesson?
Yeah, absolutely. So when the trail committee came together, as I mentioned in previous slides, we were looking, what the current use was in the open space, what kind of environmental impacts, and, user safety, recreational safety. And when we started talking more about the environmental side, we focused in on Lime Ridge and the Lime Ridge Trail. And we have some very active hikers that were on the committee that were very actively using the Lime Ridge Trail and talked about all the rare plant material and the different species that you can find along those trails, along that trail. And the comment was, hey, this trail's getting wider, it's getting wider, there's more erosion, those types of things. And so we started talking about the usage in that particular area. And we needed to, because of the impact from the amount of mountain bikers, we needed to take that impact and move it to another area that wouldn't have necessarily the same type of plant species in that particular area. And then we could get back to restoring the central part of Lime Ridge that started the conversation to begin with. And that's how it's literally how we got over to the southern end. We've got local conservationists, the Open Space Foundation that served on the committee that know the area very well, staff that knows that area very well, and that was the driving point behind it. It certainly wasn't to put it up behind someone's backyard, to drive use into a different location, although that was the result of it. It's not about providing more access for bikes. That's what you hear, and it's providing access in a different area and give us an opportunity to restore some of the things that have taken place for 20, 25 years throughout central Lime Ridge. Yep.
Couple more questions. In the work that has been going on in Lime Ridge to restore trails that restore areas where trails were created by whatever reason, but not an authorized trail. How much mileage do you think you have blocked off currently in that regard in Lime Ridge?
In Lime Ridge, central Lime Ridge specifically, I mean, I'm going to say probably 3 or 4 miles worth of social trails that we've blocked off in the past year and been pretty successful. There were about 3 or 4 routes through the sensitive chaparral habitat and the oak woodlands and kind of that whole central area where we see the most diversity in our open space. There was a number of several destructive trails that went through there, and staff has been pretty successful in shutting those down. But yeah.
And are you done? Is there more that you're still working on in that regard?
We're never done. I think there's always, in that area, I'm pretty happy with where we're at currently. There's other areas that we're starting to focus on, but it just takes a few events for things to open back up. But for now, we are, for the most part, pretty comfortable with where we're at right now in central Lime Ridge.
Okay, so 3 to 4 miles probably has been shut down.
Yeah, give or take.
And how often, in an average year, how often do you create new trails or add to existing trails?
None.
Not very frequent.
We haven't built, since I've been here, we haven't built any new trails. No.
Okay. Do we have any deeper knowledge of that in terms of past history?
Yeah, we've rerouted some trails. I wouldn't necessarily call them new trails, but we've done some reroutes. I would say the last trail that was built was the Bayberry Scenic Trail that basically takes you from the Bayberry dead end there off of the Canal Trail, and takes you up to the upper tunnel and takes you across to Central Lime Ridge. Are you familiar with that upper tunnel by chance? Yeah. So Bayberry was probably the last project, and that was in 09, 2010, somewhere in there.
And how long a trail addition was that?
Oh, I'd say it's about a half a mile.
Say like 0.7, 0.8 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, half to a mile, yeah.
All right, thank you.
I run faster than he does, so he thinks it's longer, yeah.
We'll hold a race after the
Yeah.
meeting. You know, in looking at the proposed flow trail and then having walked Lime Ridge a bit, the existing legalized mountain bike trails are basically the fire roads, right? Which are, for the most part, straight up and down from what I can see, right? I mean, there's not. Whereas the proposed flow trail is a lot of back and forth. So as far as a mountain biker, which they could ride faster on, it would appear as though they, and I wasn't, when I was there recently, there were really no mountain bikers there, but I got to imagine the speed of the downhill, of the straight downhill, is a lot faster than the flow trail, which is the back and forth. Is that it's probably a fair statement?
Yeah, I'll let you.
Yeah.
Which is faster?
Potentially. I mean,
If speed is an issue, which is
It
faster?
depends on who you're talking to. And
Yeah.
to go back on the definition of a flow trail, I mean, I think if you Google it, you can find it's a roller coaster track or whatnot. I mean, it can be designed in ways to also slow you down, and it's not just a straight downhill racetrack. I mean, it like I said, it could be laid out in a manner that you're slowing down to get back uphill a little bit, and then you got the drop that kind of slows you down a little bit or speeds you up. And so I mean, there's different aspects to the flow trail that could be determined at a design state. So.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to your comment. That's some of the feedback we get from bikers is, hey, you're restricting us to these double track trails that are a lot of this and up and down. And obviously there's some bends here and there going around the different valleys. And they say the speed that we pick up on those trails is far more dangerous for everybody else around us as opposed to using the single track trails. And to Corey's point, the flow trail will be built in such a fashion that it's going to control some of the speed. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll chime in here a little bit. Mike, I got a question for you. My focus, I just have a couple questions, but I want to focus on the reports we received. But my question regarding the report is for you on one of them. The consultants mentioned the having a biologist and or botanist on hand if the trail were to be developed. Is that something, since you've been with the city, that you've ever seen done, is have those consultants on hand when when a trail is actually being built? I know it's been some time since something's been done, but.
Yeah, I would say when projects in the open space, most recently projects that you guys have heard about, where we're not redesigning, I guess restoring our stock ponds. They're required to be on site. They're required to give an initial training of the staff that are going to be working that project in terms of what to look for, what to do when you see it, those types of things. And then they're literally there as inspectors on site during the project, during construction.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I have a question or two for our consultants. For Dana and Heath. I assume they're still there.
Are they still there?
Okay, great. Okay, so I was looking at the report, the different parts of the report that talked about suitability of habitat for plants, suitability of habitat for animals. And I just wanted clarification on a couple things, because I saw in one hand where it talked in the charts in Appendix C, for example, it talked about how these habitats, the current habitat was suitable for, say, the tiger salamander, the habitat was suitable for the red-legged frog. But then early in the report, it says essentially that it's not suitable for these animals. And I want to get a clarification on that, because again, at one end it says it would not be suitable, and then the conclusion here in the chart is that it would be suitable. So can you clarify that for me?
Hi, this is Dana. Yeah, I'm not sure which specific part you're referring to as far as where it said it was unsuitable, but is my suspicion is that particularly for the red-legged frog and the tiger salamander, they really have this sort of two-part life cycle. So they will spend an awful lot of their lives underground or sort of in leaf litter. A lot of the red-legged frog can kind of just be in leaf litter or kind of under bushes, and the California tiger salamander will really go into something like a ground squirrel burrow and basically live almost all of its life underground. And so from that perspective, there's ample habitat for them out there. There's ground squirrels. There's a fair amount of, in the oak woodland areas, there's leaf litter. Even in the scrub habitat, the red-legged frogs could just sort of hide in the scrub habitat. But it's for the breeding phase of their lives that there really is not suitable habitat. So for both of those species, what they really need is something like a very large, like a large stock pond, like a lot of water, basically. So either a big pond or in the case of red-legged frogs, they can reproduce in like a stream, but that would have to be like a fairly large stream that would hold water for a large part of the year, for them to be able to successfully lay eggs, for those eggs to hatch, for the tadpoles to go through their entire life cycle and turn into an adult frog. And so from possibly that's what you're referring to, where I think we had said that, yeah, it's suitable for one phase of their life, but it's not suitable sort of for the other. And the point being that, there are a lot of stock ponds that do have a lot of water in them throughout Lime Ridge. And so these species, they could be successfully reproducing in these other ponds that are really nowhere particularly near the trail alignment, but they can leave those ponds and go a significant distance out away from them to find burrows and hiding places where they can spend, a large portion of their lives, really. So that's I think what we were referring to there.
And yeah, just to clarify, it was the breeding habitat or suitability for breeding habitat. So it sounds like what you're saying is you could have salamanders or red-legged frogs hang out in the area, but not necessarily reproduce.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. I know I had some other questions somewhere, but I may have to save it for another time. I think, is there at this time, any other questions by commissioners? Okay, great questions, very good answers. I think it's time to move on to public comment time. Yeah. And we'll start, again, please, if you haven't filled out a card, fill out a card. State your name, please, and we welcome.
Hello. Good evening. May it please the PROS Commission. My name is Christina, and I own a home in Rancho Paraiso in Walnut Creek. As an avid hiker of the Lime Ridge Hills abutting my home, I vehemently oppose the existence of a roller coaster-like bicycle flow trail in Lime Ridge open space. A high-speed bike flow trail would rob people, horses, and local deer of their right to peacefully share and benefit from a precious natural habitat. The city of Walnut Creek already pledged to protect the Lime Ridge open space to the Rancho Paraiso homeowners in 1996. With the same outrage and insistence that bicycle riders demand for cars to give them the right of way on our roads, so do we, the people, hikers and horseback riders, who also speak for our local deer, demand that the City of Walnut Creek and the PROS Commission cease and desist any plan or action aimed at creating a bike flow trail in Lime Ridge open space now or in the future. The Rancho Paraiso and Crystal Ranch homeowner associations are prepared to file an appeal should the city ignore our demands to protect Lime Ridge open space. This natural habitat is home to many animals, but most important, it is a welcome respite for people from the stress of daily life. And a bike flow trail will totally, radically change that experience. We, the people, want to peacefully enjoy our Lime Ridge open space without fear of being run over, severely injured, or possibly killed by a speeding cyclist. Thank you for listening. And I would like to share a website that Rancho Paraiso homeowners have built with lots of information. Who should I give this to?
We'll take that, yeah. Thank you. Speakers? Yeah, please. No, we're not calling. If you could line, I'm sorry, if you could line up over here, yeah. If you could line up on the left side here, it'd be great. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Martin Steinpress. I lived in Walnut Creek in the Northgate neighborhood for 25 years and now live over in Crystal Ranch in Concord over the hill. And I've used the open space, both Lime Ridge and Shell Ridge for all of that time, both hiking and biking. I also work with the Open Space Foundation and Save Mount Diablo. I primarily wanted to compliment the pros and staff for the trail closures, the restoration. I've watched and been appalled in years past with some of the makeshift bike paths that were built and the damage to habitat. And I know years ago there was kind of a shrug and not enough staff to handle that. But I'm really happy to see that that's been tackled. That fencing, trail closures have been put up, and the efforts that have been made to mitigate that damage is really good to see. I really appreciate that. The current flow path is on the Walnut Creek side of the ridge. So as a Concord resident, I don't feel the need to comment or place to comment on it. I'll probably give it a try if it gets built. So. But certainly if phase 2 goes ahead with the flow path over on the Concord side, I hope that a big effort will be made to engage the Concord residents on that side of the ridge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Dielson. I'm an avid mountain biker, and I'm very happy to see that the flow trail is being proposed. I ride all over the place. I ride up in Reno, Nevada. I ride in Truckee, California. I ride here at Shell Ridge, Lime Ridge. And a flow trail, I think, would concentrate mountain bikers in one area, keep it safer, actually. Mountain bikers are generally responsible, well-educated people. I've been mountain biking around here for a long time. I was a NICA coach, which is the National Interscholastic Cycling Association, so I was a high school coach for 2 different teams in the area which use that space also. There's probably 100, 150 kids that ride in the Mount Diablo, Shell Ridge, and Lime Ridge area. My riding experience with flow trails is that they do concentrate riders. They keep hikers and bikers separate, dog walkers, joggers, etc. My experience up in Reno at Galena Creek, which is a Washoe County park, hikers, bikers, dog walkers, they all get along. They're all respectful of each other. And this is something that's kind of lacked here. I'm actually surprised. I just came back from Truckee, California yesterday, where I have a house. And when I ride up there, people are nice to each other. They wave, they say hi. There's not the conflict that I see down here. So I'm hoping that maybe this flow trail and opening up the other trails that you've worked on to bikes will help improve that. And the bikers here are mostly locals. They're mostly well-educated, affluent people that spend $3,000 to $8,000 on a bike, so they want to take care of it. They want to take care of the environment that they're in. So I'm here to encourage you to open the flow trail and open even more single track to bikes, and hopefully that this will make the community get along a little bit better. Thank you. Does that matter?
Thank you.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Can we please keep comments to the comments you'll make up here, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner, Commission, Mike and Corey and all of you, thank you for all you've done for the wonderful Lime Ridge open space community. My name is Chad Olson. This is my daughter, 10-year-old Abby, and I've got an 8-year-old daughter, Callie, and Cody here that's 12 years old. And we are homeowners along the Lime Ridge open space. We're about 75 feet from one of the access points. We just want to say, just make a public comment that we want to go on record that we, the mountain biking community, want to partner in making responsible trails. Our family uses those trails for both hiking and mountain biking 3 to 5 days a week. And as parents, you know, having kids in the community, and I know grandparents, and there's got to be a lot of families here with kids and grandparents, getting outdoor activities for exercise in a safe way to get kids out of the house, away from the TV, away from the internet, away from video games is so essential. We've seen in our little court children get out into the open space because they were introduced to their friends mountain biking. So we've found it a very effective tool for exercise in our community, and we're so excited to have the proposed flow trail and other improvements for mountain biking to get kids out on bikes and husbands and wives out exercising. It's better for our healthy community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Richard Scow. I'm the homeowner up in Lime Ridge, right up in Rancho Paraiso. And I really want to compliment you on a lot of your questions. You're asking the right questions because there are a lot of issues surrounding this whole flow trail proposition. Someone asked a question about the directional impact, and there is no real directional impact, and there's going to be conflict between walkers, riders, and the natural resources that are up there. There's horses, there's cows. It's a ranching community up in behind us, and they have a lot of cows that come down there and graze on the land, and it's going to be a very impacting situation. I think the one thing that, as a homeowner up in there, I've been there since 1998, and I wasn't there at the original time of 1996 when the dedication was made of the property to the city of Walnut Creek. But our home, we live right adjacent to or next to the fire trail. Our home, that's the gate that goes in there. There's an access road there. We are right to the right of that access trail. So we have a lot of familiarity with what goes on there. They talk about being up there inspecting the area a lot. I have never seen, PG&E and other users are up there a lot more than I ever see any of the staff up there, you know, doing any kind of consultation or anything. It's just not happening as far as I can see. And I'm a retired person. I'm around there pretty regularly. I'm a biker, but I'm a road biker, and I don't ride on the mountain bike trails. Not just a personal preference. It has nothing to do with the mountain biking riding. One thing we have noticed, though, is if you ride the area or drive on the area and go out Ignacio Valley Road and you come up to Cowell Road there, the area that's been impacted and they're talking about trying to restore is really a very, very difficult situation. It's going to just move the problem from one area to another area because they're not going to be, the riders are, they're going to be getting off trails. They're going to be going down and not respecting the property. I would just invite you to make sure that you look at the number of trails. We've got 103 trails in our area here, so there is plenty of mountain biking trails. And also if you look at the video, I think you were sent a video, and you see a mountain biking trail that is ridden. They're thrill rides. They're trying to jump and That's what they're made for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Susan Miller, Walnut Creek. Tonight, I would like you to take off your Parks and Rec hat and put on your open space hat to consider the true impact of what is being proposed in the Lime Ridge open space. The intent in the Lime Ridge Master Plan was for non-intrusive activities that would preserve the area in a natural state for many generations to come. This proposal for a flow trail is the opposite. A high-speed racing trail for a small number of users will degrade the area for all other users who frequent the area to enjoy wildlife and the beauty of such. A year ago, we were told that the purpose of the project was to shift mountain bike riders from an area they were destroying to allow this destroyed area to be closed for revegetation. Well, you've already provided an alternative for those mountain bikers by changing or proposing to change many of the existing trails to multi-use. Though it's questionable how this is to be decided since written documentation by each individual trail is lacking, this increase in options for mountain bikers in effect meets the purpose and need under CEQA. And there is no need for this project. CEQA requires avoidance to select the option that meets the purpose and need with the least environmental impacts. There's no written evidence that the city ever considered any other option, nor did the city justify the need for such a high-speed recreational facility in open space. Your current biological resources assessment incorrectly states the purpose and need and lacks adequate description of the project as conveyed to the public. Therefore, the true impact is unknown. If you pursue the next step, you need to elevate the level of CEQA document based on CEQA guidelines due to public controversy and required permits from California Fish and Wildlife Service and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. You can't ignore a petition provided to you against the project signed by over 600 residents of Walnut Creek, Concord, and other neighboring cities who are the main users of this area and bear the most impact. I ask you to carefully consider that this is not the right direction and in fact goes against your Open Space Trail Committee recommendations, your own recommendations, to allow an open space lands only activities compatible with conservation, preservation, and education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carolina Katz, and I've been a resident of Walnut Creek since 1993. As a newlywed, we came to this area largely because my husband had accepted a job. He became the youngest physician on staff back in the day at John Muir Hospital. But two things kept us here. The first was this thriving downtown center that had a crown jewel of a regional arts center. And the second, and probably most importantly, maybe what we didn't even realize we would come to love and appreciate so much, is the city's dedication to its open space. We raised a family in our parks and in our open space, and it's my honor and my duty to stand in support of preserving Lime Ridge and all the open space for future generations. I spent a good deal of yesterday talking to past leaders from our community. Our conversation led me to a document which I'm sure the city holds in its possession, and it actually may predate the master plan that Mike Vickers mentioned from 85 and 06. And that is the Walnut Creek Park Trail Conservation and Open Space Plan, which was written in September of 1973. It was approved by the voters through a bond in 1974. It was fun to see in some of the pictures, the Bromwell Trail and the Bromwell Pond. Audrey Bromwell was one of the leading architects of this plan. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of speaking with Sally Ingram. Sally Ingram sat on the Walnut Creek Open Space Committee that spent years evaluating and championing our environment. Sally and I had the chance to chat, and she shared strong objection to the creation of a bike flow trail in the Lime Ridge. May I finish? She repeatedly stated that the space was designed and approved for passive use. As described in the original open space plan, slopes would vary and in no case exceed 20%. Trails can be as narrow as 2 feet, but sufficient for the width of 2 passing horses. Trail surfaces should be free of roots and other obstacles, but should be disturbed as little as possible to prevent erosion. The plan goes on, and I'm just beginning to get into it. So for now, let me just say that the committee should Google the flow trail. What is it? What does it look like? And if we proceed to go forward, we should really leave it up to the voters to decide if this is what we want in our open spaces. The activity that we've seen
Can you
so
please
far.
summarize? Can you please wrap it up? Thank you.
That's it. Final point.
Thank you.
Final point. I am not against cyclists. I am pro preservation. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could please hold your applause. Also, if you could stick to the 2 minutes, you will have another opportunity to come back. This issue's not over yet, as we know. You'll have another opportunity in other public forums, including the commission, to voice your concerns and present your issues. Thank you.
My name is Douglas Moore. I live at Rancho Paraiso. I've been there for 12 or 13 years. I've been in Walnut Creek for close to 40 years, I think. I'm a co-owner of the Oakhurst Country Club in Clayton, and I am concerned with the unplanned increase in traffic, specifically bikes. I also have to say, before I go into my 6 or 7 bullet points, I'm very impressed with the work being done here. I think you guys are asking tough questions. I think you're concerned about it. I guess maybe one of my last bullet points says, would you like, 10 or 20 cars in front of your home, maybe every day of the week? That's a tough one. I just find if we can enter from parks and other locations instead of a residence area, I just think that's really critical. Preservation of environmental open space versus damage by the bikes, the cars, the traffic, the litter. My wife says, hey, I'm a hiker. I walk around Walnut Creek, sometimes on trails, sometimes not. She takes garbage bags with her, and she's constantly filling garbage bags on an hour-and-a-half walk. And so to say that there just wouldn't be that kind of issue and problem, it's just not likely. There is already great biking opportunity all around Walnut Creek. There's a world-class ride up Mount Diablo. Where will it end? One of the things we've liked about Walnut Creek for all the years we've been here is they carefully grow it. They carefully decide kind of what comes in and what doesn't. We're not just a strip place with fast food all over the place. We're careful. We're thoughtful. And I think that's what we're counting on you guys to do. Is there an entrance without Rancho Paraiso entry? Is there a more public park-like entrance? I think that's critical. And that's it. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate all the work you guys are doing, including.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Valerie Gardner. I live in Walnut Creek. I just wanted to talk about a number of things that were mentioned this evening. First of all, there has not been an actual survey of users, of the citizens of Walnut Creek as to who uses our open space and what, are they bikers, are they hikers, are they equestrians? We haven't done that. So to be moving forward with this process with some assumption of we've eyeballed it and we sort of know who's using it seems a little hard to fathom, especially given the CEQA process itself will be quite costly to our city to undertake this. I noticed, Commissioner Garland, you asked a direct question regarding what percentage of the miles of trails are open to bikers now, and you didn't really get an adequate answer. You got 45 miles of trail. How many is open just to hikers? How much are bikes limited to right now? Because they have the preponderance of the trails are already open to them, so there is no shortage of trail. They don't like the trails they have. They want more single track trails, which the single track trails is where hikers and equestrians can go to have a safe place where they're not going to get run over by bikes. So if we wind up with e-bikes and they don't like our trails, should we build new trails for them to accommodate them? What about motocross bikes? Should we build trails because they don't work for them and we should have that? At what point do we say we can't build specific trails for specific uses? That's not what an open space is intended for. That's what other kinds of parks are made for. Enforcement, they talked about we're enforcing things. Well, the municipal codes say the speed limit for bikes is 15 miles an hour. That's not being enforced. They say bikes aren't permitted on single-track trails, primarily in Lime Ridge. They're on them every day. They are carving illegal trails every day. They are riding illegally every day, and there isn't enough enforcement due to not enough people to do the enforcing. That also is not going to be changing if you build this flow trail. There will not be substantively a whole lot more rangers out there to ensure the safety of the public on this flow trail. They've also used the term multi-use for the flow trail. It is not multi-use. It is for bikes and bikes only. And as another speaker said, what we're trying to do is relocate the problem over here and bring it over here. That seems counterintuitive to me as the way that we should be treating our open space. It should be protected and preserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Schott. I'm a Walnut Creek resident, been here for over 20 years. I'm an avid mountain biker and user of the open spaces, both hiking and, but primarily mountain biking. I do appreciate the education that's been going on with the new signage. I think we do need to work on the etiquette between our competing interests. And maybe something to consider would be maybe some time restrictions. I know on certain trails up in Tahoe, on certain days, you have different times. I wouldn't mind a permitting system where you buy an annual pass like they have over in China Camp. But overall, I think the idea of the flow trail is a good idea. Just on a little bit of a separate note, I do have a problem with the term social trail. It just seems like it's more nice than what it should be. Maybe to adopt something. I like graffiti trail. I think that would tell people that, hey, you know what? I mean, users aren't out there, tagging stuff. But so if you just talked about it that way, maybe you can own the language. But thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peter Jordan, and I'm the president of the HOA of Rancho Paraiso, and thank you for letting me talk tonight. I'm just going to hit a couple bullet points because, you're going to hear things ad nauseum. But first of all, the question I would have is how many citations has our rangers ever given out for e-bikes or mountain bikes or even hikers? Just how many official citations? Because to the point that's been brought up many times, there is no enforcement up there, none. It's nice to talk to somebody, and the biker bros who are highly educated, are really nice, but, let's face it, they're the ones that have cut up the mountain so far. How is that going to change? Secondly, this is a racetrack. It's not a flow trail, it's a racetrack. They time it, they're going to have competition on it, and you know what? Somebody's going to get hurt. Matter of fact, more than somebody is going to get hurt. And so you bear that responsibility of those kids getting hurt sometime in the future, and it will happen if this trail gets approved. And finally, I don't understand why our Public Works Department is trying to placate the greater Bay Area with a flow trail and not worry about Walnut Creek and what Walnut Creek people want. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm nervous, just so you know. I'm John Kopchick, and I'm NIMBY. If a flow trail is necessary, why here? Why destroy yet more open space next to a neighborhood? Why not the current quarry area or the terrain facing Ignacio Valley Road? Parking from Boundary Oaks area, no neighborhood next door. Why not there? They offer a lot of, the impact in the neighborhood can and will be significant. It will concentrate, I love that term, concentrate bikers next to our neighborhood. Is there any estimate as to usage? How can this project get this far? Is it 50 bikers a day, 100, 500, a couple thousand? How can you proceed without a very good estimate with some basis behind it? Come on, we're going to build and they will come? Yeah, they'll come. The Walnut Creek City Council, if I kind of read what their major objectives are, protecting neighborhoods, I think is one of the core issues. I read in the nutshell, we've mitigated things for this neighborhood, we've protected that neighborhood, but yet the city is going to devastate our neighborhood. I just don't get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gary Merle. I'm a member of the board that contributes to Walnut Creek's open space. And I just wanted to say that I'd rather talk from the perspective of the creatures. This is semi-wild country. I created a letter a year ago indicating how the National Park Service has run into a problem similar to what we're experiencing here in Walnut Creek in our open space. There is a certain amount of a deterioration, and we're talking about adding something which will have an effect permanently on plant life, wildlife, in the surrounding areas of where the trails will be put. Do we want that? Is it a principle that was there at the time that the land was set aside? Are we managing for it as a wild land or semi-wild land, or is it for a greater kind of recreation that is proposed for the biker use? I find that the nomad ecology point of view of making many studies regarding the wildlife and plant life of the area is good, but they also have commented as a pre-statement that wildlife will recover following, they'll adapt to mankind's use, and that really strikes me as really quite an overstatement that any greater use by mankind is going to affect the plant and animal life of the open space. So I think that should be considered by the PROS Commission in authorizing such a development or not. That's all.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mike Mueller. I'm one of those youths. At the risk of sounding a little old, I've been living here for almost 62 years. Well, actually, I'm 62. I moved here in third grade. Started riding bicycles on our trails, and before there were even trails. So I've been riding here all my life. I'd like to speak a little bit to the parking. Lime Ridge is really my backyard. I live very close to Lime Ridge, and the parking situation seems to be a point of contentment. Most mountain bikers are going to ride from their driveway. I ride every day from my driveway to Lime Ridge. If I lived half across Walnut Creek, I'd still ride to my driveway. It's part of the experience. As to a racetrack, I invite you to get on a mountain bike. I'll take you to a flow trail, and you'll see flow trails are built to slow people down. They're built, they're not a racetrack. They're built to slow a mountain biker down and actually to enjoy the trail. And I invite you to come ride a bike on a flow trail. Other than that, I think that's about it. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Cadman Bear. I've lived in Walnut Creek for about 20 years. I'm an avid hiker and cyclist. I've been involved in this collaborative process for almost 5 years now. I was first approached by an Open Space Foundation board member who wanted to improve interaction between users of the open space. We held public meetings. We listened to the concerns of hikers, equestrians, and cyclists. We talked about the best way to balance the needs and concerns of all the open space users, as well as the natural environment. One of the Trail Committee recommendations is to build a couple of miles of new multi-use trail in South Lime Ridge. The location was chosen specifically to limit environmental concerns and its creation is supported by the Open Space Foundation, who care about the natural environment. Mountain bikers want more legal trails to ride in our area, and the time is now to build the flow trail. One of the topics that's come up in all of our meetings is safety. I think better signs and educating all open space users of the need for mutual respect is essential. Mountain bikers want to be seen as welcome and legitimate users of the open space. Changing the social norms around mountain biking in Lime Ridge and Shell Ridge will lead to a safer experience for all users. I helped organize trail maintenance days a few years ago. This was in Lime Ridge. While we had some hikers and equestrians show up, almost everybody was a mountain biker. Cyclists care about our public lands and want to help maintain them. It's really important that we all realize we are not the first community to do this. There are legal single-track trails and flow trails in San Luis Obispo, Santa Cruz, Napa, Sonoma, Oakland, Morgan Hill, where cyclists, hikers, and equestrians share narrow trails together in a safe way. Walnut Creek is a solid and strong community. We can make this happen here too. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else for in-person comment? Okay. Okay, don't go away. We're going to take a short break right now. 5 minutes? 5-minute break? Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We'll resume public comment. We have a number of callers on Zoom.
Our first speaker is Franklin. Franklin, are you there?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the chance to talk tonight. I recognize the rights of those to mountain bike and the need for them to have access to trails. The fact is they have miles and miles of trails in Castle Rock, Briones, Mount Diablo, etc. I too enjoy mountain biking, but I don't think that our tax dollars should be used in a way that negatively affects members of our, or potentially negatively affects members of our community. You ask, how can a flow trail do that? Let's consider those tax-paying citizens who live on the outlets to these trails. Will this trail not affect the parking on their street, the litter that is dropped, the potential crime from break-ins, the increase in noise, the ability of these residents to let their kids play outside in the cul-de-sac, etc.? The answer to these is possibly or probably. These trails have always been designated multi-use trails. But now hikers and horseback riders will be excluded. How is that fair? And that is definitely the case on a one-way downhill flow trail. I would recommend looking at some GoPro or YouTube videos of how these work. They may be designed to slow down bikers, but the reality is good bikers can go quite fast on them. And if something like this is built, good bikers will come from all over the Bay Area to ride these. The idea of flow trails came before the Lafayette City Council, and they smartly said no, thanks to a number of reasons, including liability. The potential for injuries is reasonably high with these trails, which will be an added cost to the fire department to perform rescues on the hillside, and the city will have to pay more to self-insure for this risk. What happens when these trails aren't adequately maintained and an injury occurs as a result of this? We both know this is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Why would we use our tax dollars to create something that is going to be an attraction for people all over the Bay Area that is going to negatively affect local communities? Have we thought about how we control e-bikes or monitor speed on these trails? They continue to use the word multi-use trails.
I'm sorry, you'll need to summarize. Thanks.
Yeah, flow trail is the farthest thing from it. I could go on about why this isn't a good idea, but at a time when we need to be concerned about crime, homelessness, drought, public school standards, I think that this is probably not something that we should be focusing our attention on. And please consider how this affects members of our local community. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jeremy Swan.
Hello, this is Jeremy. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Hi, I'm a one-year resident at Rancho Preso. Moved here last April. I've got 3 kids, 10, 13, 15. We all have mountain bikes. None of us are going to use the proposed trail if it passes. I'm interested in just highlighting one thing. I've got a bunch of bullets, but the Public Works presentation gave, they had unlimited time to present the pros, right? And then the residents obviously have 2-minute disjointed feedback. I don't understand why there's not a pro presenter and a con presenter. A lot of emphasis during the Public Works Preso addressed the Timberleaf Trail status change to multi-use and no opposition then. Well, there is opposition now, and I wonder if the flow trail was presented at the time when it was made multi-use. Also, the Upper Lime Ridge has, parking there is never full. I drive my kids to and from everywhere on the weekends, before work, after work, and it's never full. So I think there's plenty of room to grow. A resident before me said Mount Diablo, 116 mountain bike trail miles. Briones, 47 in Briones mountain bike trail miles. There's countless others. Only 2% of the population goes mountain biking each year. That's 2 out of 100 people. For me, the public works, when they say it's not just about me, it's about the community and the environment, I just cannot see how proponents of the flow trail can simply ignore their community members that are opposed to the project. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lisa DeYoung.
Hi, this is Lisa.
Hi, go ahead. We can hear you.
Oh, great. My name's Lisa DeYoung. I am a 50-year resident of Walnut Creek, a proud Northgate Bronco graduate, and I would like to share a few thoughts on what I've listened to tonight, and I thank you for your time and your energy on this topic. I want to address one of the earlier comments that there could potentially be a parking problem up in the Arbolado Park area in Rancho Paraiso. And what I want to let everybody know is that there already is a parking problem. It may not be apparent Monday through Friday at 10 a.m., but on the weekends, ever since the Walnut Creek Soccer Club started having practices and holding games on the weekends, there is a severe parking problem, and it basically reduces Arbolado Drive to a one-lane road and egress. And so I want everybody on the panel to imagine the hillside in flames behind Boundary Oaks and trying to evacuate kids, cars from the Arbolado Park area, and then on top of it, evacuating the equestrians from DeVito Stables and 200 plus homeowners in Rancho Paraiso. So the fire danger is real, and I think that it needs to be underscored, particularly in a drought year where we have record-setting drought more than going back 100 years. The other thing that I wanted to just touch on briefly was the signage. And the signage, while it is impressive and you can see that you've done a lot to improve, will that really be adhered to by the users of an extended flow trail? Thank you so much for your time and for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Laura.
Hello. Okay, here we go. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. If you can just
Okay.
move closer to your microphone, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Laura Davis. I'm a nurse practitioner. I've lived in the area since 1984. I've enjoyed the trails my entire life, and I support the flow trail. I've recently began mountain biking more because I have a group of doctors and nurses and techs who all mountain bike together. It's a great way of exercising. As a healthcare provider, I support this low impact activity for people as a way of kind of transitioning from running as they get older and their knees start hurting. So this trail would be a great way of channeling bikers into an area where they can really work on their skills and their balance, which will prevent falls as they get older, and and prevent them from running into, you know, having to slow down or look out for other users on the trail that are from the multi-use trails. The multi-use trails in other parts of the parks, there are some that are specifically for hikers, and there are some that are specifically for multi-use, and it's nice to have one that's specifically for biking to avoid, you know, multi-use conflict. So I support the trail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Gail Jackson.
Gail, you're muted.
Muted. Okay. How's that?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I am also on the PROS committee with Matt Vickers that had. I represented the equestrians along with Elizabeth Hudson. And I'm also the president of the Equestrian Center of Walnut Creek that's there in Heather Farms Park. I think they did a really good job. I wanted to make sure that we were noted as being represented on the committee because I think Mike had skipped over us, but not intentionally. So I really appreciate all the work the Rangers are doing, Mike's doing. I'm hoping they have the enforcement because I think for a while, at least when we were meeting, the Rangers did not have enforcement for the rules. And I think they were looking at getting that back to them. I kind of don't feel like the flow trail would be good for equestrian riders. They've had been kind of run off, not by the normal regular user, but the outlaw, I guess you could call them bikers, that come speeding down hills on trails where they're not supposed to be, that tear up the land and cause everything to be closed up so it can grow again. So anyway, I appreciate the work everybody's doing, and that's about all I'm going to say about the flow trail. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is BG.
Hello, my name is Barbara Guinness, and I've been a resident of Walnut Creek since 1996. I really appreciated hearing the nomad ecology people speak, Dana Terry and Heath Bartosh. They did mention, though, that they spent one day in the area doing their assessments. At least I think Dana mentioned that. And they talked about different things. And it sounds like Mike Vickers is talking about hiring a consultant to do some additional look at the environmental impacts up there. I specifically tonight looked at the biological resource assessment from Nomad Ecology. And there's a section in there called special status for plants, special status plants. And I wanted to mention that currently up in the Timberleaf Paraiso area, there's 3 plants that are on the list that they said they couldn't find that are blooming up there right now. I think last year when they came, it was a drought year. We're in a drought year now too, but we did have the 6 inches of rain earlier, in October, November, December timeframe. So I think it really made a lot of plants come up. Anyway, the bent flowered fiddleneck is one thing that's, it says not observed in the report. It is present currently. I have pictures of it, can show you anybody that wanted to see it. The Mount Diablo fairy lantern, I just noticed today there's 3 of them coming out. One is blooming, the other 2 are more like in their bud phase. So they're currently there too. Also the Mount Diablo sunflower, it says not observed, but it's currently there and it's blooming. It's a couple really nice plants, and I'm talking right around the Paraiso Trail and Timberleaf Trail area. So it's not like they're way off in other areas that wouldn't be affected by the flow trail. In the report that the
if you could summarize,
did,
thank you. If you could summarize, okay. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bill Hunt.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Bill.
Okay. My wife, Leslie, would also like to speak, so perhaps allow us to get back in when her turn comes. So I am a longtime resident of Walnut Creek since 1976 and am currently president of the Walnut Creek Open Space Foundation. And I will be speaking for for the board of the foundation. I'd like to say one thing overall. Our foundation has two main concerns about the open space right now. One is for the preservation of the natural resources, plant and animal, in the open space, and for the land itself. There's been a lot of damage from trail erosion, widening trails, making social trails. And if we continue to allow more trails to be made, it removes habitat for plants. And it also means that the animal life in the open space has fewer places to be away from humans in the open space. So that's a big concern. The other is about safety of people using the open space. We can talk about how people coexist elsewhere, but our experience here, backed up not only by experience of board members, but a lot of foundation members and others have written us to say that they feel threatened by very aggressive mountain bike riders. It's not every mountain bike riders, but it only takes a small number of experiences where you get scared out of your wits by somebody coming at you at 30 miles an hour with no intention to slow down or yield the right of way to a pedestrian, to make you feel that you may not be able to use our single track trails anymore. It is those very aggressive mountain bike riders and those very aggressive—
Bill, I'm so sorry. Can you summarize?
Social trails. Pardon?
Can you summarize? I'm so sorry.
Who make it all more difficult for us to solve these problems about trail use.
Our next
I'm
speaker.
done.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth Hudson.
Okay, I think you can hear me.
We can, thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Elizabeth Hudson, and I am here as an equestrian. I want to talk about enforcement. You're hearing problems, and the Trail Committee's recommendation for all the recommendations we came up with included the proposed bike trail, but that was contingent upon the other recommendations, which were the education, environmental protection, and enforcement. They're a package. It's not that you get to take one or two and do those and ignore the rest of the recommendations. The reality right now is that when you have legal biking, you also have illegal biking. The illegal biking ignores the education, degrades the environment, and intimidates equestrians and hikers by putting us in danger. There is currently no downside to illegal biking. I'm going to say it again. There is currently no downside to illegal biking. In spite of staff's efforts, I still see rogue trails appearing. I still encounter bikes in unsafe areas and traveling at high accident-causing speeds. This is why you see fewer horses on the trails. There are hundreds of horses in the Northgate, area, but we're afraid to go on the trails. The reason for lack of enforcement is given as a budget issue, but taxpayers are paying for lack of enforcement. The staff time to repair the damage multiple times, that's expensive. Signs cost money. Meetings are expensive. Degradation of the land is destruction of public property and a diminishment of the nature experience. Of course, an officer at every trailhead is not realistic, but rangers—
I'm sorry, can you wrap up your comments, please? Thank you.
Okay, rangers with the ability to issue fines are realistic. Using technology to track speed and location is realistic. So I'm out of time, but the city has an obligation to make it very clear that illegal activities in the open space will not be tolerated. You have to protect the legal owners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is JJ Narayan.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Yeah, my name is JJ. I'm 27 years old, and my family moved to Hill Rise Place in Rancho Paraiso when I was 2. All my favorite childhood moments were spent in those hills just behind our house. And what made the place so unique was that because it's so quiet, you can see a lot of wildlife. When conservation say that California is a biodiversity hotspot, that is so evident if you spend any time in that open space. On the quieter days, we would see dozens of different birds. I've seen cottontail rabbits foraging for food. I've seen California quail, our state bird, parents herding their baby chicks. And I've even seen baby deer nursing and taking some of their very first steps. And it was here where I first developed my love and interest in wildlife. And that's eventually what inspired me to get my degree in biology. And today I work as a genetics researcher at a lab in UCSF. So urban San Francisco is home to me now, but when I visit my parents, I still have to go back to the open space. So much of what I experienced will go away if you let this plan go through. It'll lead to a major increase in traffic, and the quiet picnics just off the trail that I used to enjoy and that my neighbors still get to enjoy will no longer be possible. The loud or the noises will drive away the wildlife. I believe the people who come here today and say they're going to use the trail respectfully, but if you open the trail up, there will just be way more traffic and it will be inevitable. And animals are exquisitely sensitive to human presence. So, you know, it would really break my heart if the next generation of kids in the neighborhood didn't get to have those same precious moments during their formative years with wildlife that I got to have. What I learned today is that there are so many other residents who feel a similar way to me. And my parents who couldn't be here today, they love to exercise on those trails and they feel the same way as well. So please reject this proposal and protect one of Walnut Creek's greatest treasures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Anisha Naharan.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
We can.
My name is Anisha Narayan, original Rancho Paraiso resident, Northgate Bronco alum, and medical doctor. I agree with the previous speakers in that mountain bikers are an educated and respectful people. I know it's true because my father, Dr. Narayan, who lives here, is also a mountain biker. However, he, I, and the rest of my family are strongly opposed to this flow trail. We aren't against bikers, we are bikers, but we know this location is the worst choice for several reasons. These 6 reasons are from him per his request since he couldn't be present today. 1, it will ruin the peaceful hiking trails in this area used by locals. When my kids were growing up, they developed a true love of wildlife biology from exploring these trails, such as seasonal ponds full of tadpoles, which later expanded to other areas of biology. One is now a biology researcher at UCSF and the other a medical doctor, and that's me. This solitude and ambience will be ruined by the dangerous and noisy flow trail. 2, there are many bike trails already in the area, in particular the north side of Lime Ridge and Shell Ridge. The only areas that have eroded are when people bike on a single track illegally. If those need to be restored, parts of those trails can be closed, keeping many trails open. 3, there is already tons of traffic and cars parked on Arbolado and side streets due to the weekend soccer games. The bike trails could dramatically increase traffic on the quiet local side streets. And there are no bike lanes off Arbolado, furthering hazard potential to both the kids walking to their cars and the bikers. 4, the fire danger would rise in these hills. We've had to evacuate before due to increased usage. This is unacceptable at these times of very high fire danger. Already, some of the homes on Timberleaf had their fire insurance canceled. 5, there was no notification of this proposed flow trail to the local residents, and we only found out about it through back channels. This is deceptive and shocking and is not the way democracy works. 6, Every single one of my neighbors and friends I've spoken to are strongly opposed to the flow trail for this particular location, and we all vote in every election. We will be monitoring the commission council votes carefully. Hopefully the powers that be will come to their senses and not force a protracted and expensive lawsuit to prevent this outrageous act. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jim Liston.
Can you hear me?
We can.
My name is Jim Liston. I live in Walnut Creek. My house is immediately adjacent to Lime Ridge. In addition to all the concerns that I've heard already, I want to express my concern regarding the cattle grazing and the important activity that they maintain for vegetation management and fire suppression. That's about all I have to say, other than, yes, my home insurance was also canceled because of my proximity. So the cattle grazing is very important with respect to maintaining the height of the grass. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Peter Bishop.
Okay, there we go. Unmute. Okay, can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, Peter Bishop, Crystal Ranch, 20 years. Okay. If Walnut Creek adopts the proposal to create flow trails and convert existing single-track trails to multi-use in Lime Ridge, all the points raised by many interested parties will be ignored. Single-track trails for hikers were originally established for safety reasons. Trails where hikers can be safe will be removed while creating specialized trails usable only by bicycles. The last 3.4 miles of single track trails, that's all there is, will become bicycles only because of the danger. All other users, except for cyclists, will be driven from the area. Locally, cyclists already have access to over 89% of the trails, plus at least 7 miles of single-track trails in Mount Diablo. East Bay Park District's Trails for All policy eventually will convert all 1,500 miles of trails in their environment to multi-use. Hikers will be passed by the same bike, not once or twice, but many times during a hike because motorized vehicles are allowed. A primary agenda of the cyclist groups is to remove all single-track trails. Rangers have stated that they can't issue citations because they've not been trained. In 2004, Concord and Walnut Creek agreed to issue citations for violation of municipal codes. Just how long does it take to train rangers to issue citations? Cyclists cause excessive damage to environment and habitat, resulting in additional taxpayer costs to maintain and repair, deprives hikers access to trails due to frequent closure for rehabilitation, converts beautiful 1 to 2 foot trails to 4 to 6 foot scars. The single reason the cyclists have to create these specialized trails and remove single track trails is that they want it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leslie Marco.
Hi, sorry about that. This is Leslie. I am speaking. I wanted to say that a lot of people have spoken before and brought up the many points that I was going to bring up. The most important to me is actually the fire danger. And it is very important because, as many people mentioned, our traffic around here is already bad. And now you're going to add this flow trail that's going to bring possibly thousands of people from out of our area, which in another way is, I feel like I'm a tax-paying citizen here, and now my tax dollars are going to go to cleaning up their area and burglaries and all the things that come with thousands of people coming into your area. So I am very against this, and would like to also mention Mike Vickers had said to us in a meeting, he did mention this, he said to some of the homeowners on Timberleaf Court that he would put in a gate for us, either with a lock on it or with some sort of device so that bicycles couldn't get through. That was part of his plan for us. And now it's, oh, we'll see what happens and maybe we'll do that down the road. Well, I know down the road, and down the road never happens. So basically we're just going to be left with no parking in our court. And I think the flow trail is a very bad idea, and I appreciate all the speakers that have come before me, and I appreciate your time and attention tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Scott Bartlebaugh.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. My name is Scott Bartlebaugh. I'm the Advocacy Director for Bicycle Trails Council of the East Bay, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. We continue to support the Trails Committee 2020 recommendations and are glad to see progress by staff and support by the Commission to continue on. And we commend you for listening to the many varied viewpoints on this, asking good questions and giving it thorough consideration. We're glad to see the results of the environmental studies of the proposed flow trail corridor, identifying potential items of significance and proposed measures to address them, and look forward to the next steps in that process to ensure that habitat and the environment are protected through sound review and implementation of a sustainable trail. A number of people have issued concerns about if trails are built, then more areas will get destroyed, that mountain bikers won't stay on it. I would like to cite Crockett Hills in East Bay Regional Park District as an example where it has the largest number of miles of trail open to mountain bikes, and it does not have a bootleg trail issue or a social trail issue problem. Cyclists stay on the trails and things are working out. The mountain bike community remains ready to help with trail maintenance. Bicycle Trails Council East Bay volunteers provide upwards of 500 hours annually at both Crockett Hills and Joaquin Miller Park. Many of the volunteers that we engage are high school students, providing good connection. There was a question earlier about bike bell stations. Bicycle Trails Council is a partner on that with East Bay Regional Park District, and we would be glad to do that with Walnut Creek. And that is one of the items you have in your recommendations from the Trail Committee. So I am out of time, and thank you very much for your efforts, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Our next speaker is K.H. Smith.
Hello? Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, this is Kym Smith. I've been hiking the trails in Lime Ridge for about 12 years. And for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been doing restoration, volunteer work there, and trail work. And first thing I wanted to say was I have to reinforce an earlier comment that the staff has been doing a great job out there. There are a lot of trails that were being freely used and abused that are blocked now. There were cutoffs that have been blocked, and they seem to have stayed blocked. So I congratulate the staff on that, and I really appreciate the work that Corey and Mike have done in the last couple of years. Moving on, I just wanted to point out, somebody said that nobody really knew how many people were hikers and how many were equestrians, et cetera. The Open Space Foundation has a website, and on that website, you can find a 2018 trail survey that was done that might answer some questions that people may have along those lines. The other thing I wanted to say was that the bikers have really used all of the single track trails. And as a matter of fact, for example, there are social type websites that keep track of statistics, distance, and times. And it's taken from the users' cell phones. And for example, 90,000 rides were recorded on the Ridge Trail, on part of the Ridge Trail, and by 3,400 different people. So
I'm sorry, you'll need to summarize.
Okay, in summary, I think there's a reason why we have sidewalks and bicycle lanes and roads, and it has to do with the speed differential between cars and bikes and pedestrians, and multi-use trails are not a good idea. This particular flow trail will have to be connected using multi-use trails.
I'm sorry to interrupt. In the fairness of others, we have quite a few people. How many, Heather, do we have?
We have 4 left.
4 left. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Kevin Cabral.
Thank you. Hello, like others have stated, I appreciate the great work. I've been on a lot of these calls. Again, my name is Kevin Cabral. I'm 56 years old, and I've lived in this area my entire life. I have been hiking, biking, and exploring the Lime Ridge Hills and that around it before there was a college, Rancho Paisano, or Montecito. It's interesting for me to hear some of the folks on this call talk about how special it is for them to go out into that area and the growth that they've had from it. I think that's why we have open space. I think that's why this is such a good idea to open it up for more people. Also considering that mountain bike is the new user in that area. I think looking at a way for all users to safely interact in that space is wonderful for this community. And again, I can't say how much I appreciate everybody doing all this hard work so we can identify that there's a new user. It's kind of like the equestrian in a weird way, but it's true. And then we could utilize this space, help it grow, keep it safe, and have our kids and grandchildren experience that so close to their home. Not all of us have the ability to live near an open space like this gem here in Walnut Creek. But we are entitled to use that space. And I think it's wonderful, the open conversation that we're having. I think the steps that this group especially has taken to listen to all sides has really benefited this entire community. I will keep it short, and I thank you very much for taking my call.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is James Kelly.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, this is Elisa Kelly. I'm Jim's wife using his computer, so my apologies for the bait and switch with the name there. I've been a resident of Walnut Creek since 1998, and I've raised my family here. I'm not from California originally, and I can share with you, coming from the Midwest, what an absolutely gorgeous place it is and how friendly the people are here. And I very much appreciate all of the points of view and the intelligent conversation that has occurred tonight. I'm approaching this from the point of view of those that cannot speak, which is the wildlife in our area. And I think all of us during the pandemic have seen such a resurgence of, everything from the birds to the deer to the foxes in the area. And so I would just ask that people consider this particular portion of Lime Ridge, for those of you that have been there. Parts of it appear to be very delicate. There is one part that's a ravine that when I've hiked by, I've seen wildlife, I've heard owls, and I'm not sure that this is the answer that will solve the problem. And I think we do have to be aware of those that wish to use the space in different ways than maybe some of us do, but I'm not sure that this particular location makes sense. Also, I think the conversation about Arbolado Park is important because those of us that go up and down that street are constantly being very careful not to hit people jumping out of cars. It is very congested on the weekends. So I would ask that everyone please consider that. And I do appreciate the respectful conversation. And I hope there's a way we can all come together to perhaps a better solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leslie Hunt.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Leslie.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make several quick points based on things others have said or not. First of all, nobody has really addressed the speed differential on trails that would be open to both hikers and bikers. And I think that this is one of the crucial points. A person going 2 miles an hour hasn't a prayer against someone going somewhere between 15 and 30. And that's what makes many hikers hesitant. The other thing, another thing, building on what the previous speaker just said, the animals won't move and the plants can't move. They are where they are. So we all have to, in using the open space, give the animals the right of way and stay away from those areas where they are so that they can continue to live. And our open space has the interest that the founders intended for it. And the founders did intend very much that this be a preserve with only passive recreation. No equipment, no facilities, et cetera, et cetera. I think that that is why the people of Walnut Creek wanted this open space. It's why I've devoted 30 years to helping to restore it and protect it and keep it. And I don't, frankly, want to be crowded out of it. I have just as much right to be there as anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Karen Stiles. Okay, our next speaker is Smanir Advani.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, okay, thank you. I am a 7-year resident of Walnut Creek, and I'm also a resident of the Rancho Paraiso community and on the HOA board. I am opposed to the flow trail. I think that the process that this has gone through has seemed unusually rushed, and I'm confused as to Mike's conjecture that this wouldn't need to go through the Lime Ridge master plan, as it seems fairly clear in the master plan that this type of use was not considered when the master plan was developed. And I would assume that the proper venue for something like this would be to update that master plan and take a more comprehensive look. The other thing I'd like to add is that without enforcement of the current rules in Lime Ridge around the different users, how can we move forward with building yet a new attraction if we haven't made adequate progress in dealing with the issues that currently exist? And with that, I will say thank you for everything you're doing. It's a very constructive conversation, and have a great night.
Thank you.
So I see that Karen Stiles is still on the call, but does not have her hand raised. And, oh, there it is. Karen Stiles? Karen, are you there? Nope, your hand is no longer raised, Karen.
Oh, there she's in there.
Oh, am I there now?
You
Hello?
are. Yep.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. I'm sorry, I had my first Zoom tonight. My name is Karen. I live on Dapple Gray Lane, right across from the pickleballs. And it doesn't seem to be a problem with the pickleball people where they play. It's only a problem with the homeowners here. Nobody told us that they were going to take the 2 tennis courts that had been there since 1976 and make them into 38 pickleball courts. And it has caused a lot of disruption. There's no peace and quiet here. One of my neighbors told me one of the reasons.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you speaking about the flow trail or as a parallel to?
Pickleball.
Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. That item is not on the agenda. Certainly will come up again. You can speak to.
I didn't get in the beginning, and so I got a phone call from Dana that said that I could call at the end of the meeting, that I could get in at the end of the meeting. I guess you have no more flow trail talkers.
There will be other opportunities to address pickleball and the concerns around that area.
The only concern is the homeowners. The pickleball players really don't figure into this because they'll play anywhere.
Thank you for calling in. Please join us at next PROS Commission meeting. Thank you.
There is no hands raised at this time. The only thing I wanted to say was Linda Haraguchi spoke at public comment and I think wanted to speak on this item, so right. I didn't know if she wanted to come back in and raise her hand. There she is.
Linda, are you there? Okay, we hear you.
Yeah, thank you for getting back to me. Everyone said everything I had to say. I'm a 43-year resident of Walnut Creek and raised my family, and I'm in the Arbolado Park area. And I just echo all of the concerns that have been raised, especially around the traffic down Arbolado and the danger to the kids with all of the traffic going around, especially on the weekends. So I appreciate everything everyone has said, and I'm against the flow park. And thank you for your consideration and getting back to me.
Thank you, Linda.
At this time, there's no other hands raised.
Okay, so we'll move along to, should be commissioner comments, correct? For commissioner comments, commissioners, any comments?
I'm not going to go on too long because what has been said, I'm sure other people are going to say as well. But I thank everyone for their impassioned remarks tonight. This is probably one of the biggest I've seen in the years that I've been on it. So thank you to everybody who's still here and who's listening. I'll keep my remarks somewhat brief. I think that this is a process, and we're still in the process, and things are going to be figured out. There's a lot of anger and a lot of hyperbole that I'm hearing, and I realize that this is a issue that a lot of people feel strongly about. But I urge us to maybe turn the temperature down just a little bit. And somebody had gotten up and said, there seems to be a lot of other communities about the same size as ours with open space that have not necessarily figured it out, but there's a balance that I think other communities have achieved, and we need to work to be one of those communities, because I think right now there's a disconnect, and whatever the end result becomes will be because we need to come together and realize that we're all trying to share our beautiful gift that is the open space. I think that was all I wanted to say. Yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
It is important that we keep in mind all the proposals that were accepted by this commission from the Trails Use Committee back in December 2020, of which the flow trail was but one of the proposals, because if we can work all those issues, and we are getting updates with periodically, as Mike and Ranger Corey did tonight on many of those aspects, I think we can be successful as a whole in terms of achieving what we set out to do, which was to have our trails be a safe environment for all the users, and that our trails are responsive to the users, which is a growing base. This is not a static world that we live in. A lot of thought went into those proposals. A lot of work was done by staff and the committee. And some of the committee members spoke tonight during the comments, and I appreciate them doing that. There are ways to come together, and I think that we can find those. And I think the examples that people cite and the incentives that we have to come together and enjoy this wonderful open space gem that it is in a way that all the community will be supportive. So let's keep working this and keep the comments coming, suggestions, all aspects, all sides, so that we can ultimately make the right call for the people of Walnut Creek and the other surrounding communities. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciated all of the comments tonight, and we received many written comments as well in advance of the meeting. One thing I noticed was there does seem to be misinformation out there, particularly on the history of this and how it came about. So I appreciated Mike, kind of giving a little background on that. But I'm wondering whether there's a way to make sure that the sort of clear history of maybe how the Trails Commission or Trails Committee came to be and who was on it and how those people were selected and, just more of that type of information, because I think there is maybe some mistrust of the process is something I picked up on in a variety of the comments. And I think we do need to be able to deal with that, not only for this issue, but in general. As a commission, we want to have the public have trust and faith in the process. I also agree with my fellow commissioners that we do want to make this work. I'll say from a personal position, I haven't heard anything really compelling to make me think we need to build a new trail, but I do think we need to work out how to have what could be conflicting uses be balanced within the open space, not just Lime Ridge, which is the key right here, but all of our open spaces. I've been on those trails. I've had bikes roaring down, don't holler out, don't ring a bell. And I've had to step up on a rock to get out of the way. Now they've slowed. I mean, we weren't in danger, but that's a jolt of fear, when you realize that that's happening. So, and I've seen kids doing all kinds of crazy things in there that they should not be doing. So I do think enforcement is also key. And there are many recommendations in here, and I think the flow trail, it doesn't say we will build, it says we're going to look at it. So I think it's, I think the process needs to continue and we need to take everyone's issues. I think a lot of the specifics about the flow trail, mostly environmental things can be dealt with. I think we could solve the parking problem, but I always come back to, do we really need this trail? Is it really in the best interest of Walnut Creek residents and the original purposes of the open space? I'm open-minded still, but I'm not 100% convinced that a new trail is the right thing to do. So I want to keep talking about it and working on it, though.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'm going to add to this, because I think it was well put by other fellow commissioners, is that there are a lot of interests here. And we're all passionate, those of us who spend any amount of time in the open space. And I can speak to the fact that many of us on this commission spend a lot of time in the open space. My wife and I, during COVID, for the last 2.5 years, hike Lime Ridge every Sunday. Now, when I go to that open space, what am I doing? I'm hiking, I'm not biking. My interest is in the natural setting. I like the natural splendor. I like to look at the plants. I like to spot animals. That's been my interest. But also recognizing that, again, the uses change and there are various interests. But I recognize the safety, security, enforcement issues. It's easy to have, as we know, a lot of things in life, it looks good on paper. How do you execute it? And enforcement, no question, is going to be a challenge. As I've experienced many times, again, I've met some very respectful people on mountain bikes on the trails. I've also run into some folks who are not so much. But I can say the same thing maybe about people camping illegally in Lime Ridge. Or I saw 3 teens the other day on motorcycles in the Lime Ridge. And because I'm not a law enforcement officer, I didn't do anything other than to videotape them and yell at them as they pass by. But it's those kind of things. It's going to be very challenging. So as was mentioned by commissioners here, we want to put a lot of thought into this, right? A lot of thought. Clearly, there's quite a bit of money being paid by the city. So no decisions on our part. We want to look at this further. Again, tonight was we weren't coming any kind of resolution. We were just talking about it. We want to still hear from you. I want to hear more from the folks too that have questions about the flora and fauna. I was waiting for this environmental impact. I was looking at suitability and all habitability and all those things, and because that's what I enjoy about the open space. So I know there are other considerations here, but those of you out there, when it comes to the wildlife, the plants, and things like that, please, we want to hear from you as well. And if there's no other commissioner comments, okay, we're going to move on to commissioner reports. Do we have any anyone want to report on anything? No? Okay. Just real briefly, I mean, it's not a report, but I do want to say that, and Mike said it in remarks earlier this evening, that in the March 25th City of Walnut Creek Weekly Report, the city had thanked the Walnut Creek Open Space Foundation board member Phil Johnson for his work in the fossil area of Shell Ridge, as well as thanking all the members of Walnut Creek Open Space Foundation who volunteer their time in the open space of Walnut Creek. A week ago, I was hiking in the open space right around that area, ran into Phil, who is, as he is all the time, working out there, shoveling, clearing weeds, watering and all that. And the poppies and other plants, it was absolutely beautiful. It's really a beautiful time of year. Phil did remind me that just because the poppies go away, there will be other blooming lower to the ground flowers and things as well, and other plants. So just a reminder, check it out if you can. It's a special place and a special time, and thanks to the Walnut Creek Open Space Foundation folks. So with that said, we'll move on to any staff reports.
I had just one item. I wanted to just update the commission and the audience about the Your Parks, Your Future. I provided an update last time we met, and I think you might recall, but for the audience's sake, City Council has given us direction to put a new pool, start working on the design of a new pool and a community center in the same location as the community center is today, so in that location. So at a staff level, we've been working with our consultants at a very high level with the programming and trying to figure out how could the building fit and how could the pool fit. And so we're going to be going back to City Council with that proposal. We're going to be asking City Council, and that will probably be on May 3rd, so stay tuned for that. We'll be asking City Council also to weigh in on the lap pool size. As you might recall, that's been a big debate, 25 meters versus 50. And then there is a discussion for the community center to be an essential hub, essential services hub, which would mean it would be there for if we had an emergency, that it would be designed to a standard that it would become one of our emergency centers. And that will be one of the questions. And then 1-story, 2-story. That was a discussion that council had of, do we want the views? Do we want 1-story, 2-story? How does that fit? And that will be another piece that we'll be going to City Council with. And then we'll be back to you in PROS in your June meeting, and we'll be talking to you about the preliminary conceptual site planning. So you'll have a chance to weigh into that also. So I just wanted to give you that update. Tomorrow night on City Council, there is an item for a maintenance of agreement, memorandum of understanding, excuse me. That was I was like, what's the MOU? Sorry. There's an MOU for the aquatics and the city to help fund a pool if it were to be built. So that's on council tomorrow night. So that was my update.
There are no more staff reports. This will conclude our meeting. As Heather mentioned, the next meeting is scheduled for Monday, June 6th. So with that, we're adjourned.